You are now listening to the Low Hanging Fruits podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. This is your Low Hanging Fruits. I am, of course, Chariot.
And I'm Bang Bang Duck from Twitter.
Yeah, notorious Twitter personality,
Notorious.
known Star Wars critic, The Boys enjoyer, of course.
Long time hater and loser, some have said. and I think we're all losers today. We're such losers today because today is the day of the Mandalorian and Grogu, the worst Star Wars movie ever made.
Yeah, I guess we'll maybe have some back and forth and talk about why that is. But you've been pretty negative on this one, haven't you?
I have been extremely negative on this one. I've been quite hostile towards this film. Maybe undeservedly so. Maybe this is actually a great movie, but it isn't.
Well, why don't you kind of walk us through your views on the thing, and then we can dig a little bit more into it.
So I went to go watch The Mandalorian and Grogu on, I think, Thursday. I had heard reviews of the film were negative, and I decided, let me see what I can see. Let me see if there's anything of value here. This movie sounds really terrible. The early reviews for The Mandalorian and Grogu were, oh, this is the worst Star Wars movie. I think one said, put a fork in it. It's Star Wars is done. Yeah, bad. The overall impression of the film was sort of very, very resolutely negative. And I think that is probably the result of the film itself being bad. Fundamentally, these critics are basically right. And when I went to go watch the movie, it was one of the worst things I've ever seen in a theater. Wow. This movie is truly atrocious. But I think there's maybe a light at the end of the tunnel for The Mandalorian and Grogu, because it is atrocious in a way that I think will lend itself in maybe 10 or 15 years to being sort of a cult classic, so bad it's good kind of movie. I think the bits of this film that are so truly terrible are mostly in the waste of money, time, and effort that it represents for everybody who was a part of this entire project.
Yeah, star power as well. You can probably add to that. Sigourney Weaver's in this one.
It's a waste of time, and it feels like this movie is just truly. I know the word baffling gets used a lot. It's truly a mystery to untangle. How this movie was made, why this movie was made. This is it's like The Room to your bad. It's it made me think of Mystery Science Theater 3000, which was a show a long time ago about a guy who gets shot into space in a spaceship, and his bosses make him watch bad movies to monitor his mind. And that's sort of a framing device for a proto riff tracks. The Mandalorian and Grogu is never so boring that it really can come to the point of being truly offensive. But it is, it never has plot moments that are it doesn't string the audience along. It doesn't give you the Rise of Skywalker kept dangling out little plot threads for the audience to latch onto, and then it kind of felt like it turned around and slapped you in the face, because you had given something of yourself into this movie and said, show me what's going on now, and the movie had decided to spite you. Whereas The Mandalorian and Grogu never asks for the audience to actually like pay attention or care about anything that any of the characters are doing at any point. So it never feels like I've been betrayed by the film.
There was never
I
a
think
point at which you thought, oh, this is going to be like a provocative experience.
Yes, like when we find out in The Rise of Skywalker that Rey is Rey Palpatine, that she's a Palpatine, it feels bad. It feels really bad because I heard about Rey. I was willing. I had, through the previous two movies, I had been willing to like invest myself into the character of Rey, into Rey's world, such that it felt very. I felt stupid because the film didn't care, and the film made me feel stupid for being forever having cared about Star Wars. Like I think Jenny Nicholson said that, and I really agree with that.
Yeah, her review of that film, by the way, is really good.
Yeah, The Mandalorian and Grogu. I think what offended me the most about The Mandalorian and Grogu is that a lot of reviewers have been saying that this movie has a lot of like stuff for the fans. Like, oh, there were a bunch of cameos that I'm sure some fans appreciated. And as a fan of Star Wars, I just want to say I don't know who any of these fucking people are. I don't know who any of these characters are. So this idea that this is for me somehow, I think that is really like the worst part of the Mandalorian and Grogu's press cycle is like I feel offended that I'm one of the people who likes this, allegedly.
Yeah, that's sort of, I guess, takes us into how the film kicks off because, fittingly for that description, we open and we're on I can't remember the name of the planet, but we're on the ice planet. There's a few kind of sequences, the big like set piece sequence with the AT-ATs, but this is all basically characters that we wouldn't be too invested in, minus obviously Mandalorian and Grogu, Din Djarin and his little apprentice, which is the word that the film uses for him, which kind of I guess is me edging a little too close to something I want to say later. But we don't get to the weird stuff until we get to the huts. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think I want to start by just going through the plot of the film because I think a lot of people are probably, based on word of mouth and reviews, are probably not going to see this film, and so they're not going to have like a concrete picture of what happens on a moment-to-moment basis.
Yeah. So we start out, Din Djarin and Grogu are hunting rogue Imperial warlords. We get a sequence with that in the beginning. He's looking for one in particular. He's collecting tribute from, I think, like local governors.
This is one part that does feel like betrayal because it's Coat Warlord from. There's a scene in The Mandalorian, I think season 3, where we see all the Imperial warlords around, and there's
they're having a hologram meeting, I believe. They mention like different projects for the Empire.
There's 2 legitimate glove shittos in that scene. There's Brendel Hux, who is the father of General Hux from the sequel series, and then there's Gilad Pellaeon, who is a fan favorite character from the old EU. And there's a bunch of other random guys standing around, and so this guy that we're first introduced to is Coat Dude. He's really terribly acted. At first, I thought this guy was just a bad actor. As sort of the movie went on, I started to get the sense that it was more of a bad direction problem.
I did, pursuant to that, this will sort of fold into, I'm not going to say this every time it comes up, so I just want to say it now with respect to that. I do think it's very interesting how often I felt like I saw something and I was like, oh, they used that take, or did they stitch that together out of like different,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I wasn't sure if what I was looking at was the best version of what had been put to paper, I suppose is the way that I would put it.
Yeah, that. There's a lot of lines in this movie uh, that are like really oddly delivered. There's a lot of editing in this movie that's like really odd. Um, I, Actors regularly swallow their lines at the end of the sentence. So this is a really basic problem in acting, where people naturally kind of speak the last word of their sentence in kind of a lower register like this, and it's sort of okay to do that in day to day life when you're talking to people, but when you're recording, it sounds just absolutely terrible. Um, and so it's like it's like a 101, like, oh, you're recording, you're acting, don't swallow the end of your lines, speak up at the end, put emphasis at the end. And there are multiple lines in this. It's fairly common for actors to just sort of swallow their lines. It almost feels like they were supposed to like go back and do like record the lines in a booth afterwards, and these were just like what they said on set. uh I'm not sure exactly how this movie was made, um, but it's the direction is just truly atrocious. Atrocious.
Do you think
The
maybe
action
there's a
scenes.
chance some of it was originally intended to be ADR'd or something like that?
Yes, sorry, I completely lost the acronym. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of these lines were intended to be ADR'd, and then for whatever reason, they either forgot to do it, um, or they like couldn't get, or these are ADR performances, and like the voice direction is bad. But whatever the case is, that there is a lot of like really odd bad deliveries. Um, this first Imperial warlord delivers all of his lines in it's such a strange affect, right? He almost seems like it's not like amateurish, but it is just like bemused, maybe is the right word. Did you pick up on that?
I think the thing that I noticed when I was watching it was there's kind of a tone shift where he's doing a persona, and then as of course the character panics as Din Djarin is getting closer to him. Um, but early there's a rug pull in the scene where he does the evil Empire guy thing, where he executes somebody on the spot for like just disagreeing with him, just saying like, I don't want to give you that much money, or whatever the dispute is, like
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be taxed at this amount, I'm collecting this much. And then the guy's like, well, we can't do that because more of our stuff gets pirated. And then the warlord is like, are you saying my protection's not enough? And it's like, well, if you're a competent Imperial, you'd probably hear that and go, fuck, my protection's not enough. But obviously he's the bad guy, so he has to kind of do a little mustache twirl and be like, how dare you reprimand me in my office, you know? And he shoots the guy. And I
Yeah,
think
there's a lot.
that was the
Let
moment
me,
where I felt like something about the emotions of the scene was a little bit odd.
that's true. I think it is just that like the bad guy killing their own guy at a conference is like Star Wars kind of started this with the famous force choke scene, and it became so popular over the course of like the 80s, 90s, and 2000s that it became a cliche, and then even subverting it, where like the bad guy is actually a decent boss, has become a cliche. Like this whole scene is a really like foundationally limited scene. It's like a really broken scene in a way.
The way that I guess
Um,
I would have thought to do that is because, I mean, notably, Vader doesn't kill Mahdi. Famously, like he Tarkin has him live, and I think the way to do that scene is to just have him like threaten his family or something, to be like, remember, I have all of your, family members or whatever. It's just
yeah,
it's something that a warlord would do. Because this is like, drunk on your own power type stuff. I'm not really, I don't necessarily think that it's like bad writing. I do think that the way that it was conveyed, I just kind of felt like it was just a thing that happens in the scene so that the next thing can happen. This is like a pet peeve of mine, as you well know from our conversations about the Star Wars sequel trilogy, where I really hate when, you know, directors of films will have stuff that is just like a domino put in front of another domino. I understand from a kind of artistically utilitarian perspective, that's all films ever are, structurally, but that's not really how you construct a deeper meaning, you know? Like, I think there's this kind of idea that, like, almost Kuleshov effect, like simply putting things next to other things creates meaning. But the point of being a filmmaker is to do that proactively. And I guess I kind of wonder what it was saying, why they were doing it. I will have to go back and rewatch at some point when this is on Disney Plus. I do kind of want to see, and of course, when people have like just better rips of it online, I want to see that scene again so that I can look for what you're talking about with the acting. And this sort of feeds into, you know, another thing I'm not going to say every time it comes up. The whole film really feels like it's just a few episodes of the show, or like a season with a bunch of like plot stuff cut out and condensed. You know, the characters kind of, they do an almost like Simpsons like return to norm at the end, where it's like, okay, you destroyed the huts. People have been memeing this pretty hard online. Like I made a goofy post about something that happens early in the film with the person of interest cards, and I compared it to the Iraq War. And of course, some people were like, that's not the only time that happens. I did get some pro-Iraq War people in my mentions for that, which is very funny. And then I also got a couple people who were like, oh, we're gonna, you know, also memeing, also joking, being like, we're gonna destroy the slave trader empire or whatever. Which, like, I'm not mourning the Hutts. We'll get to this in a second. But I do think that this kind of I don't know, it kind of misses the fact that, like, there's more than two Hutts. So, like, politically, that's just a Hutt empire or a Hutt gang power vacuum for them. You know, the idea that they've defeated the Hutts, that wasn't a Death Star at the end of that film. You know, like, it's not, there isn't even really a good reason to believe that conflict is over necessarily. They just helped a couple people. And I think that's a perfectly acceptable arc to, you know, have the Mandalorian. And this is the comparison I'd make with the Mandalorian is it's kind of like Kung Fu with David Carradine, where he kind of like wanders into a town and there's some people there and there's a conflict and maybe there's some kind of vague philosophical motivation behind the conflict, and he has like a little personal arc attached to it, and then he solves it and he moves on to the next thing. That's fine. I think that it's a little bit odd for it to be like a Star Wars film. Even the Solo film, which I think is better than this one, had some moments in it where you kind of look at it and you say, like, this film is like saying something about the galaxy of Star Wars. You know, it's saying something about the way that who this character is and who he chooses to be says something about his relationships with other people. And I guess I just don't know yet what this film was trying to say about its characters, except for the best character in the film / one of the most, you know, controversial. But as far as the writing goes, I think the best character is Rhoda the Hutt, because I actually feel like I was introduced to a character and I learned something about him, and then there were consequences, and then he made a decision, and he had like an arc, which is meaningful, again, sort of just by itself, if a bit isolated. Not that
So
I
now
was
we're past
expecting Grogu to have like a big philosophical struggle in this film. That's I'm not. I don't want anybody to mistake my meaning there, but, you know, something.
Now we're past the first 5 seconds of the film.
Right. So he does. He does. I thought this was kind of okay. He's like destroying the Imperial Walkers when the Warlord is escaping.
Do you want to do all the action just in like one chunk? Like, I don't feel like any of these action sequences are distinct enough to really benefit from like some kind of you know, to benefit from going through all of them in
The
turn.
Walker
I
sequence
think
was the one that I thought looked the best. I did make a note at the time. I recall thinking to myself, and I think I messaged you and I said this. It was something like, not enough of these characters are screaming. Usually in Star Wars, if a character gets shot or hit or something, they do like a scream, and it's very cartoonish, and it's Flash Gordon-esque.
There's not a lot of feedback on the hits. There's like when the Mandalorian like fights people, there's not a lot, like there's no blood. There's no blood in this entire movie. Even
He
a lot
uses
of places
knives
where
and fire. These people should be upset about getting the way they're dying.
Yeah, but they're not like it is really almost like a ghostly, dreamlike kind of film. It doesn't have there isn't really a sense that anything is actually connecting in any of these action scenes. And yeah, like I want to do all the action scenes at once because like they're kind of all the same action scene basically.
Yeah.
And they're all bad in basically the same way.
Well, there's two types of action sequences in this film. There's Mandalorian punches people through a hallway, and there's Mandalorian trapped in a pit with monster. Those are like the two.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think for what it's worth, the monster pit ones are a little bit more engaging, because you know there's a physical obstacle, so there's a sense of like, how are they going to get out of this? That's more narratively compelling. Structurally, if you have characters trapped in a hallway, what was that?
Some of the monsters are pretty neat.
Yeah, no, I liked a couple of them. You know, and there's just like they do weird little things with them. Like the next sequence that I'll mention after the Walker thing, is so he blows up, by the way, the Imperial Warlord as he's trying to get away. And then Zeb rescues him because Zeb is in this movie. Later on, when they're on the planet where Rhoda is he on? He's not on. What's the name of the planet?
So Zeb picks up Zeb Aurelios is this horrible purple monster who I hate looking at. And he picks up the Mandalorian from Ice Planet, and they go to San Diego Planet.
They go to San Diego Planet.
Yeah, it's a Delphi base. It's just like truly atrocious. It's
yeah, the one that people will know if they've seen the show.
Yeah, it's San Diego. Like it's like the Marine Corps base around San Diego. Like I have a huge problem with a lot of these planets because they look too much like a place in California. And it looks cheap. Like
the
a
sort
Delphi
of Return
base
of the
looks,
Jedi effect, I guess.
Yes, it feels like, oh, you just went and I'm sure it's all computer created, which is like part of my problem here. Like you're shooting this film in California, and you're computer creating sort of the stretch of beach between Los Angeles and San Diego to put your X-wings on, and it just feels cheap. It feels like you went out to a back lot.
Yeah.
For no reason. Anyway,
this film is a little bit cheaper than your average Star Wars film.
Let's say every dollar you can see every dollar
saved. Is that what you were gonna say?
Yeah, you can see the savings on screen. It's really obvious that this is.
I did think a number of the CGI characters did not look what you would expect 2026 big CGI budget CGI to look like.
I think a lot of this is a directorial problem. I'm gonna be mean here, but like you have to when you're doing an effects heavy piece, you have to like decide. Oh, I'm going to use CGI monsters that look good, right?
I mean, I think this is something people have harped on a lot, and it's this idea that when Disney bought Star Wars, the people making the sequel trilogy, especially for the way that the first film, The Force Awakens, was advertised, really leaned on the idea that Star Wars was going back to practical effects. And when they got into production, as much as they tried to do that, and there are times when you can see it, as much as they tried to do that, they just realized that like the reason why companies use CGI so much is because a lot of the time it's easier. And I think that George Lucas helped pioneer a lot of stuff that they'll lean on now because it's a little bit easier than probably it was when he was doing it. I do wonder, looking at this film, how much of it was just on like a green screen soundstage as opposed to like a constructed set, how often that happened. But I guess I'm kind of getting a little bit ahead of myself because I want to talk about the big monster fight. There's a monster fight in this film that uses the monsters from the Bhang Chariot game.
They go to San Diego. Sigourney Weaver is there. They stand around. They go to it's really weird. This next sequence is like 20 minutes that are just really odd to me. Because it's like a montage of the Mandalorian going places, like landing his spaceship, getting out of the spaceship, walking down a hallway, talking to somebody, and like then getting back on his spaceship. And it's like 4 or 5 times in rapid succession we get this sort of like, and it's at this point Lucasfilm knows how to shoot a spaceship going off planet. Like there's a lot of stuff that looks very good here, like the way the dazzling azure sky fades to black, the rust and grime of the burned metal cowling on the engine. Like everything looks great, but like we are literally just watching the Mandalorian get on a spaceship, fly to a place, talk to somebody, fly back. This goes on for like 10 minutes. It's a huge chunk of the movie, and it just feels like it's flailing. Like the movie started off with a pretty rough action sequence and a kind of bad performances from Sigourney Weaver and Jacket Warlord, and we're already like just kind of flailing for something to do. I'm not super sure what exactly the Mandalorian, the Sigourney Weaver tells Din Djarin to go to Nal Hutta to learn about who he's supposed to hunt down, like an Imperial warlord, who knows something ambiguous. And he meets these 2 incestuous Hutts who tell him to go to another planet called Shikari to find their nephew, Rada, and save him, and to bring him back.
Who viewers will know from the original beginning of the Clone Wars, the animated series, where Ahsoka saves a baby Hutt who is Jabba's son, now his own man, and he is now big and muscular because he fights in a gladiatorial arena setting.
Yeah. So we go to Chicago planet. And
fuck, it really is.
It really is Chicago planet. I mean, it's so lazy. They have like an elevated rail. You know what Shikari looks like to me? It looks like the strip of Gotham that they built for the Batman, the Matt Reeves Batman movie. Like it has that very specific it's like a corner set that they used a bunch in the film. It's got a little club, it's got a little diner, it's got an elevated rail, and everything else is kind of CG filled in.
Yeah, this was something I noticed, by the way. I want to talk a little bit about this because I think people had very split reactions to the arena sequence and some of the action that happens here. We do get a small action sequence of Din Djarin just like fighting these characters in a salt station, but there's like pets there, like exotic pets. Like it's pretty clearly like a bunch of gangsters are camped out there, and he wants to talk to the gangster in charge, who has Rhoda's contract, and they have a scuffle, and it ends. There's an Itachi, which I thought was a cool prequels reference, and he cuts off the Itachi's horn, which would hurt really bad, I feel like. It's another thing that feels, a little, I don't know, unimpactful. And, Itachi are a semi-telepathic species. They don't really use that. He's just kind of like a cool thing to look at, just a different looking guy. It marks him as a different character for when we see him later. I wondered why they cut the horn. I was having a Chekhov's gun moment. He cuts one of the guy's two horns, and then later we see him in the crowd, and I kept thinking to myself, is this so we recognize him later, so we know he's not like a different guy? And I was like, because it's not like there's a bunch of Victaci in the film, you know, like it just seemed like it was a thing that happened just to have it happen. The Ictachi isn't even getting up and like scuffling with him really. Like I think he kind of leans forward in his seat like he's about to get up, and Din cuts his horn off, which feels very out of pocket.
Like, and a lot of fighting happens in this movie that feels really like there isn't any stakes.
Yeah, he does. I do want to throw this movie a bone at least a little bit, because there's a sequence where he talks to the guy who runs the food truck, and he's one of those little aliens from Solo that the pilot guy who is in the sort of like, I guess, heist team. This guy owns a food truck, and it's charming. I liked that interaction. You know, I was watching it and I was thinking, this is the kind of thing where if it was in the show, I'd like it a lot. If this was in just the show, it would be just as good. And that's a theme for everything I feel about this film. The stuff that doesn't work very well, people would be more forgiving of if it was in the streaming series. The stuff that does work very well would be just as good if it was in the streaming series. So I feel like the film doesn't really justify itself too well on those grounds. Do you want to talk a little bit about Road to the Hut? I know you had some some feelings about that.
Road to the Hut shows up. He's the best character in this film because he is an atrocity. Road to the Hut has no good dialogue. His delivery is unbelievable. Truly, truly unbelievable, and almost like unimitable. Like I can't do a Rod of the Hut. I have no idea what happened, but he speaks in like this low monotone about his own experiences, in like he's a woke guy who works at an advertising firm trying to manage his familial trauma. He's very matter of fact. He's extremely calm about everything, even when he seems to be like in personal danger, which is kind of unbelievable. Like it's kind of hard for me to believe that there's that much in this universe that is truly dangerous to a guy like Rod of the Hut, who appears to be about 10 or 20 feet long and weigh a couple of tons. Like, I feel like going through the world as Rod of the Hut, you kind of would internalize a little bit of swagger, a little bit of like, I'm the most jacked dude in any given situation. But no, he's super like retiring. He's super passive. He's very calm, level-headed almost.
Well, that's there's two types of character writing instances in this film, and one of them is like stoic good guy, or just stoic character, and the other one is guy who's about to die. Those are like the two personality types.
Yeah. And so there's this like the plot is actually really kind of weirdly complicated, even though people are just sort of explaining it to you. Rada. Okay, so it's very simple. The Hutts want to kill Rada for some reason, but we have no real insight into how powerful these guys are. Like a big part of the problem with this film at this point is that there's not enough exposition that's been done, so we have no way to situate ourselves in the universe. I think the only way this film was even a little bit comprehensible to me was my extensive knowledge of Star Wars Hutt lore. But you kind of have to know that the Hutts are independent from the rest of the galaxy. That the Hutts are like the lords of their own sort of society. That this society is they have this really it's like a mafia empire kind of,
You know,
in that
weirdly,
they're
this
all
film leans on that exposition from the Phantom Menace a lot. If you think about it, the stuff that Qui-Gon and Panaka say about taking Amidala to Tatooine, the Hutts are
yeah.
gangsters, but they're not controlled by the Republic.
Yeah. I mean that's and you really have to like you have to know, oh, like that's not just something that was sort of a de facto arrangement during the Phantom Menace. That's like how the Hutts are set up. You have to know a lot about
We've just
Hutt lore.
mysteriously transplanted the independence of the political state of affairs from that onto this.
Exactly.
Despite the fact that no films really set up what the exact political conditions of the New Republic are.
And where the borders are, because it's kind of a big thing that like, oh, he's outside of the jurisdiction of the New Republic, which is why it's important when Colonel Ward, which is Sigourney Weaver, comes in to rescue him at the end. But we're never told any of this, and it feels like we could have cut an action sequence for some of this. I think a lot of the time when people complain that the plot of a movie is confusing or that there's too much exposition, what they're actually complaining about is a lack of exposition. There's like not enough is being told, so everything that you're being told is frustrating. Every time the film tells you something, it's more frustrating because you don't actually understand what's happening. And if the film had just like spent a little more time breathing and trying to explain like what's actually going on and what the stakes are to you, you might forgive it a lot more. So the Hutts want to kill Rada. The Hutts want Din Djarin to bring them Rada the Hutt, so they can kill him for some reason.
I think the implication is he's going to inherit his father's empire. Like he's like royalty. His bloodline is always going to be a threat to them.
Yeah, but like but we don't even know. Like we have to do the assumption here that that Hutts have bloodlines, that Hutts have dynasties, that Hutts are right. Like we have to do all of this work ourselves in the background to figure out what we're supposed to know. Like it's never told to you that, oh, this is the way Hutt society works. Like in the old EU, Hutts were even like asexual, like Hutts or hermaphroditic, like they were like slugs. They would reproduce of themselves without coupling. In this film, they apparently have gender, but there's no real way for you to like know like who is Mrs. Jabba the Hutt. They also call Rada throughout the entire film. They call Rada the Hutt, which is not. First of all, the Hutt was not Jabba's title. That was a moniker because he was the only Hutt most people on Tatooine knew. There are many Hutts and of the Hutts, Jabba was one of them, a fairly backwater one, as I understand it. Like he was on Tatooine. He wasn't on Nar Shaddaa or Nal Hutta, which are the Hutt's center worlds. And Jabba's full name is Jabba Desaligic Tur. So there's no reason why anybody would call Rada the Hutt. At any point in the entire Star Wars universe. His name is Rada Desiligic Tur. And the film, it's one of those things where the film just doesn't care who's in it. The film doesn't care about its own character. This seems like, I recognize.
I think calling him that.
This is an extremely like dumb complaint that they're saying Rada the Hutt instead of Rada Desiligic Tur. But like, I think it's an example of how the film doesn't respect itself. Like it doesn't respect its own universe enough to say, well, like, oh, like, you know, this is a Hutt, and people will do like, I'm a big A Song of Ice and Fire fan, so people will pay attention if you ask them to, right? A Song of Ice and Fire, there's like 40 Aegons, and A Song of Ice and Fire fans will be like, Aegon the Unworthy, Aegon the Third, Aegon Dragonbane, right? Like they'll fans will put in the effort to know the different characters.
Yeah.
So you can call it's so cowardly to call him Jabba the Hutt. It's so like it breaks my immersion. It breaks my sense of my sense that this is a real world.
Yeah, they don't want to they seemingly aren't interested in investing, like building up our ideas about like who the Hutts are, but they also don't like how to put this, like they trade very heavily on just whatever the viewer's impression will be, which is why they call him Rada the Hutt, I assume, because the viewers will be like, oh, they need people to know he's Jabba's son, so they need to make the connection, and he's a Hutt, obviously. So people will just be like, oh, the Hutt, Rada the Hutt, you know, he's like the other guy, Jabba the Hutt. It like you say, you know, I've never heard anybody, you know, who, even just like casual people who watched Game of Thrones, I've never once heard them be like, well, why doesn't Sir Loras Tyrell inherit Highgarden? Nobody asks that, because I think the series respected, even the television series respected people's intelligence and attention spans just enough to establish why that is, and then just not question it going forward. So yeah, I mean, I think this is something I hadn't considered, but I think that you're right about that.
Yeah. What are the stakes here, really? Like, what happens if they is, and this is something with where once you start asking this question, like answers obviously present themselves to you, right? Oh, Rada is a different guy. Rada wants to turn the Hutt crime empire around, right? The existence, you know, maybe Hutt society is more complex than criminality. Maybe there's a bunch of Hutts who would follow Rada because they think he's honorable, right? And the twins are threatened. So now there would be like geopolitical consequences, right? And this would color every relationship. But there's none of this. There's no sense that Rada is even you know, like isn't if my biggest political rival was enslaved on another planet fighting in the gladiatorial pits with no evident interest in changing that state of affairs, like why rock the boat?
It is interesting that they don't tell the Mandalorian that he's about to not be a slave anymore. I wonder if the twins know that, and that's why they tell Din Djarin the lie, to kind of give him a sense of urgency. But they had to have known that Rada would just be like, that's not true, right?
Yeah. So Rada's the slave of a guy called Janu Coin, I think, which is just the name of the actor who plays. The actor is Johnny Coin. He's named Janu Coin. Mm-hmm. This is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
It's also, I think it's like a double pun a little bit, maybe not, but they do the person of interest cards, where the New Republic has like sabacc playing cards for the different political antagonists that they're trying to capture, and he is their ace of staves, which I guess is interesting because ace implies that he's a very important, at least to the viewer, will imply that he's a very important figure, but he doesn't feel that important, actually. By the end of the film, he feels quite insignificant. So he's just a guy, and there's another suit in sabacc that's not staves, but it's coins. So he's Janu Coin, but he's the ace of staves. I guess, I don't know. There's something there. Maybe that's not intentional. He could have been the ace of coins. That would have been funnier, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, it would have been better if there was some. There's no real ties into sabacc. Like the game that they're playing is Desagic or whatever. Dejaric. There we go. And it's the whole thing is just it's a reference to the chess game from the Phantom Menace, which would honestly be fun. Like that I would be okay with this. Yeah, from a
Which
New Hope.
Pushes up glasses.
The space, it's space chess.
Yeah.
And like I don't have like a huge problem with space chess. Like I actually think that's a decent notion, and all the little guys in it are fun to watch. But it just frustrates me because none of these characters feel. It's just frustrating because like it doesn't feel like this means anything to the characters.
I want to get back to the Dejaric match, because this is something that I genuinely noticed the first time I saw it. because they have a Jurassic Park moment where the arena breaks and all the monsters rush out and they start killing people. And if you've seen the Jurassic Park movies, you know that there's usually a pretty clear delineation, and some movies are better about this, between the types of deaths that you give like a villain versus an innocent person, right? Some movies, like I think the second Jurassic Park, and I think also the it's either the second Jurassic Park or the third Jurassic Park, and Jurassic World have some really mean-spirited kills in them, where people who did literally like almost nothing wrong just die horribly. And in fact, there's even one, I think people can correct me whether this is Jurassic Park 2 or 3. There's a character who I liked who is trying to help the characters who are in a trailer that's falling off the cliff. He's got it hitched to his car and he's trying to save their lives, these like innocent people. And he's trying to save their lives out of the goodness of his heart, and the T-Rexes come up and they're trying to eat him while he's saving them, and they pick him up out of the car and then rip him in half, so each of them eats half of him. It's very dark, and it's emotionally dark because he was just good. So this is a character who gets punished essentially in the narrative for trying to help. Whereas if you watch like the second Jurassic World movie, there's a scene where the elevator malfunctions and it opens and it dings, and all of the like stockbroker people get eaten by the genetically modified dinosaur. I was going to call it a monster, but it's a dinosaur. And that's supposed to be the punishment for them like playing with people's lives and their money, and sort of being symbolic of rich people who don't care about the environment. So that's the difference in how those films operate. With this film, something I noticed right away is the monsters break out and they just start killing people in the audience. Now, these people are at, they're at like a gladiator match, which in and of itself is about watching people die. I mean, it's not necessarily about watching people die historically, but we see two examples of the matches, and, in one of them, our characters are about to die, and in the other one, a guy really does die because Rhoda flattens him. So, you can infer from what the film is showing us that this is about watching people die for sport. It's blood sport. And that the film would narratively punish the characters in the audience, all of these unnamed people, it kind of clicks, like there's like a moral arc in there. But what happens next is the monsters break out, and there's a continuity thing that people pointed out where Din gets his blaster back, even though it's taken from him when he's in the arena. Which didn't bother me too much, because that's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, maybe they were running out of the building and he was like, quick, Rhoda, I have to grab my blaster. And then he runs and he grabs it from like wherever they had it. Would showing that have enhanced the film much? Probably not. But compared to the stuff that you were talking about, I think that's like a minor continuity thing, whereas what you're talking about is a lot more major. But what I noticed is these monsters break out of the arena and now they're killing just passersby. The really gross, like centipede-looking one breaks into the train, and the inference is that it's killing people in there. There's ones that are just like crushing people and eating them. There's a shot of somebody in like a kitchen, I think, either in an apartment or a restaurant, and one of the monsters is like eating her food, and she's like cowering, like behind in like a corner, and the implication is that her life is in danger. These are like very mean-spirited kills is what I'm getting at here, basically.
And there's no blood. There's no blood anywhere in this entire sequence. There's no blood.
It is bloodless, but it's I think it's like emotionally dark, even if it isn't like necessarily portrayed that way with gore and stuff. I think sometimes, as somebody who likes horror movies, films that have a lot of blood and gore can be gross out fests, but they're not necessarily emotionally brutal. And I think when a death is emotionally dark, it's actually worse. It's harder to watch usually.
It is. It's a little funny that neither Rada nor the Mandalorian seems to really care about the carnage.
Quick, Rada, we have to help them.
Yeah, right. It doesn't. I mean, nobody seems to really. It's one of those things where the characters don't really react to anything, so that they never sell anything. So like if Din Djarin, if there was even like a reaction shot of him just like walking down the street in all this carnage and you know, looking around or trying to save somebody or something, if it seemed like he cared at all, it would feel like what was happening in the film was actually happening. But he never seems to care. So as the audience, it's very easy to just be like, well, you know, if the movie isn't telling me how to feel about something, then I just don't need to care about that. I can just turn that off.
Well, speaking as somebody who inhabits both roles, you know, YouTubers who do like political analyses of children's movies, you know, they might care about the abstract politics of a film, but an audience member who watches it will often connect with characters on very personal levels. So when they see a character do something, their first thought isn't always going to be, well, I can understand how maybe abstractly this is supposed to indicate like a society that entertains or allows for, you know, this kind of cruelty will one day inevitably have it revisited upon them, or some kind of metaphor like that. But in practice, it just looks like Din Djarin doesn't give a fuck. And the emotional response that people will have after the fact is, well, why should I care about this guy who doesn't care about those guys? That's how a lot of people, I think, process empathy for fictional characters. And true to life, a lot of Hollywood films are based around, they give villains comeuppances because early in the film, a villain does something that's very not empathetic, which establishes to the audience, you want something bad to happen to this guy. I had a teacher once, a math teacher when I was in middle school, who talked about, you know, multiplication and division. And she explained something to a classmate of mine. She said, you know, you multiply a positive number by a positive number, you multiply a negative number by a negative number, they both give you positives. Why? Because if something good happens to a good person, that's a good thing. And if something bad happens to a bad person, that's also a good thing. This was how she explained it, which is a very funny explanation for, you know, explaining maths to a child. But, you know, obviously, like, it is kind of infantile and also kind of a very human impulse to have. And I think I don't know.
The fact that we don't see anyone actually die on screen, and the film seems to
people get like eaten and stuff, right? Like the centipede thing swallows a couple people.
People get kind of mashed up. I forget if I saw the centipede thing actually eat anybody. I think it was just like grabbing them with its mouth.
It swallows, like it starts to swallow a guy whole in the audience, and then there's a person who gets like their skull perforated by its Ridley Scott second mouth that pops out, I think. One of the monsters does that to somebody.
Maybe I was in the bathroom.
Well, it cuts away, so you see like the back of he's driving a car. It cuts away, you see the back of the headrest of the seat, and it's dark, so you don't see it. So like I actually saw it, and I was like, wait, did that kill him? Because it's ambiguous, but like there's no shot it didn't. You know, like if you think about it, like a human body with human physics.
Because the film is like so willing to just cut away from any like actual kills, it starts to feel to me like neutral things are happening to neutral people, or maybe not. Like, I don't care about any of these monsters. I don't really care about any of these people in the street. I don't really know. The film isn't brave enough to like actually tell me or show me what is happening to these people as a result of these monster attacks. So
right. Well, abstractly, we can infer a lot of things, but I think as a director, you're sort of supposed to communicate the emotional content of a scene, you know?
Yeah, and it's one of those places where there really isn't emotional content to the scene at all, because the film is not telling me what to feel. It's cutting away from all these actual. And if it was showing somebody dying horribly, maybe like don't put that in the children's movie, but don't. It's a bad movie.
Can I point something out that you're gonna hate when you notice? You mentioned when we were talking, some of the action scenes are a little weightless, or they're not like really well like choreographed. They're just sort of like a series of things kind of vaguely happening. I noticed two very funny things. One of them I messaged you about, which is in the AT-AT scene we talked about earlier. There's a guy who at one point turns and has his blaster on Din Djarin. Like point blank, he can just shoot him. Now Din Djarin has Beskar, very rarely does the film do the thing that they kind of overdid in the show, where his Beskar deflects blaster bolts. I started noticing this. I was like, the film is almost treating him like if he gets shot, he dies. Not always, but there's a number of sequences where like characters are like, he's grappling with them, and it's like, you know, it's not that big of a deal if he gets shot in the head. That helmet's made of pure Beskar, and it would just conduct it out. He'd be fine. So the character should kind of be acting like he doesn't care. But then, so the blaster thing, he could have just shot the guy, right? He could just shoot Din, and Din can then turn around and knock him out. That would be a perfect way to choreograph that. But instead, he like shakes his blaster at him. And I looked at that and I was like, did they mean to edit like a blaster firing on that? And then just not do it? And then they didn't. Yeah, because like, what's the actor thinking in that moment?
Well, there's none of these. I mean, the part of the problem is like, if you watch a great action movie, you'll notice that the protagonist loses or comes out kind of neutral in most of the action scenes. Or if they win, the only thing they really win is that they survive. Atomic Blonde is one of my favorite action movies. A lot of those action sequences in that movie end with Charlize Theron's character in worse situations than when she began. So maybe she survives because she's such a badass, but we can feel that the action is weighing on her. And we can feel that the fight is really, tearing her down. But in The Mandalorian and Grogu, it's kind of like an RPG where like he wins all of his fights like pretty handedly too. Like so it doesn't feel like you could cut all the action scenes. You could cut most of the movie.
There's a worse
and just not
one
watch
than the one that I mentioned.
This is my proposal for anyone who's still watching this podcast is that just cut the whole movie. Just don't watch it.
I mean, it could have been like a 45-minute episode of the show if they did shave a lot of it back, or they could have been like a double header opener to a season. There is something that I do kind of think they should have cut from the film. It was like one of those things where it's like, I can't think that this was originally intended to be the show. They made this movie to make a movie, but the way that it was structured was so baffling to me. I was like, do Dave and John make these shows the way that they make them because they're not that good at it, and it just so happens that they've gotten away with it? Or like, did they just not realize that they had to change what they were doing because it was a film? I don't know. Like, it was just, I was asking myself a lot of questions. The thing that I wanted to say about the action is to speed up a little bit. They go to catch Janu. Janu Coin is escaping. He's back at a compound which is sufficiently occupied by Imperials, so we know that our characters are right, because Rhoda tells Din the crucial information. He's like, wait, you're looking for like somebody named Coin? That's Janu's name, Janu Coin, which is like, you'd think that would have come up, but it's fine. It's fine. It's an okay conceit for a film to have. And then they rush to go help him. There is a sequence though when they're entering the compound where Zeb is like monkey barsing his way through the hallway. He's got that staff that's like important to his people, and he's like hitting stormtroopers and stuff. And there's like, if I remember correctly, and people can tell me I'm crazy if I'm wrong, that's fine. If I fucking remember correctly, there is like a cut where you see Zeb kind of going through the hallway, and he's rounding a corner, and he's hitting a bunch of guys. And then there's a cut, and then just shortly thereafter, you see him do it again. And I was watching it, and I was like, am I having like deja vu? Do I have like am I having like a mental break?
The same shot.
It's not
twice. It looks like it.
I don't think it's exactly the same, but it happened. It was the same type of thing that happened twice. So it just doesn't feel very deliberate, I guess is how I would say it.
So yeah, so there's a boring bad car chase with Janu Coin. They bring Janu in,
which, by the way, the whole time that they're like trying to escape from the Empire, the Imperials are like totally shooting to kill. They're just gonna kill Janu now.
But they don't.
They work for him.
It's one of those. But they don't shoot like the engines of the speeder. which is just odd.
But like if you're in a car and you've got like my girlfriend and you're driving away and I'm trying to save her from you and I've got an AK-47 and I just start unloading on, she's gonna die, you know? Like it feels very ill-advised.
Nobody like who isn't an Imperial in a mask gets killed by blaster bolts in this whole movie. Well, the one alien guy in the beginning, but like it doesn't feel threatening. It doesn't feel threatening because it's so none of these action scenes are any good. I hate this.
You did mention that it was very open. Like even the "They Fly Now" sequence you brought up about Rise of Skywalker, it's in like a canyon, so it's like a trench run. With this one,
so like
it's like kind of almost like a field.
Skywalker, there's escalating tensions, and actually, I think they don't. Like that's the one where they end up like falling through sand or something. So like that chase scene has like interrupted some exposition that they need. And it's also put them into like a new plot situation, which is basically how like this is because J.J. Abrams is a hack director, but he's actually been to like film school. So his action scenes are pretty bad because they don't feel really motivated by the characters or the plot, but they're technically proficient in that they're operating on the level that you need an action scene to operate on. The stormtroopers chasing them at Janu Coin's estate is not technically necessary. All this is these characters want to stop the Mandalorian and Grogu from escaping, and they fail in this. So it's very one dimensional. There's no escalated tensions. There's no it's meaningless. The whole sequence is meaningless, and all the action scenes are like this.
Well, notably in Star Wars, if Darth Vader's like chasing the Millennium Falcon, right? End of Empire Strikes Back. The Star Destroyer is closing in, and then they jump to hyperspace, and it cuts to Darth Vader, and he's got this like, "Oh, I'll get you next time" kind of energy, and then that's where we leave our heroes off. And I think this one, it's just like, okay, back to California.
For the episode break, and now we're introduced to bullshit character from the Clone Wars people think this guy is like a glub shitto that I'm supposed to know who this fucking guy is. The guy with the hat. I have no idea who this guy with the hat and the dog is. But he kicks Din Djarin's ass, and with like an electro net or something, and brings him back to the Hutts. Who now the Hutts have basically everything they could possibly want. And I think in this situation, you just have to just like smash his head like Game of Thrones and kill Rada, and like the movie could just fucking end already.
Interestingly, when Jabba does the same thing with the trapdoor and he puts Luke in there in Return of the Jedi, that is a sequence that imitates like almost one for one a sequence from Flash Gordon, and he's doing it for the benefit, in Jabba's case, of like an audience. But with the twins, it's just them and like the guards that they have working for them, and I guess maybe the other bounty hunter is there as well. Who also, by the way, I think, isn't he not the one who takes Din's helmet off? He's at least there, right?
I don't think we ever get to see him even take the helmet off. I think he just comes. We just cut into the scene and he has the helmet off.
No. They pull the helmet off, and then you can see, Pedro Pascal gives a little stink eye. I remember this. It's somebody pulls the helmet off, and I thought it was the other bounty hunter. It might have been one of the guards that did it. But this just gets me to, I have to say this, I'm sorry. I fucking hate what they've done with the Mandalorians. I know that this makes me like Karen Travis Dick Ryder probably. And she fucking hates trans people. So I'm going to lose like a ton of aura for saying this, but I just have to, I have to put myself in aura debt. It was better. It was better when they were like super commandos, like a civilization of like weird, like warrior Spartans who also had like strange cultural norms and stuff, because they were from a warrior civilization that had just won and lost so many wars that they were just recruiting from like orphans that they orphaned. You know, like just weird stuff like that. I don't like the whole foundling thing. I don't like the cult thing about having to keep the helmet on. That feels like a bad writing choice, because now they just have to do that forever. You know, like, and if they abandon it, then it's like, oh well, I guess that wasn't that big of a deal. They've instilled it with like mythological significance, because they go back to the water underneath Mandalore for the mythosaur, which was a cool thing that they did in the 3rd season of The Mandalorian that I liked. I really have to get through this at some point, because if I don't say it, it's gonna like kill me holding it in.
Okay.
I feel like they've just massacred the Mandalorians, and a ton of the stuff that they've made since has proven that they didn't really have like a that much interesting stuff to say with it, which is a shame, because originally a lot of the stuff that made the Mandalorians interesting was that they were making stuff sort of during the prequel era, back when there was like a lot of, and just before the prequel era, because they did like the New Jedi Order and what's it called? What's the one after that? Not, because New Jedi Order is when they have all the use and wrong stuff. Legacy of the Force, yeah. So they do that, and that kind of leads into the prequel era when we're getting eventually the Clone War. So there's like a Mandalorian explosion that happens over the course of like a few years there, where a few of these things start to overlap with each other. And that was what made it interesting, because we were learning a lot of stuff that was incidental to a story that was being told. But I just feel like it's not interesting. It's not good, like, character motivation. I don't, it's strange. It's very odd. And it's a weird decision that they have now had to commit to. And it's like one of the things about this film, the Hutt see Din's face, and they're like, you're going to be outcast by your cult, which isn't fucking true, by the way, because the previous season already established that you can just cleanse yourself in the water. And I don't think they ever said that was a one-time thing.
Also, they don't even know, how do they know he's part of this specific Mandalorian like cult? Like, most Mandalorians don't do this at all.
I guess maybe they know who he is. Like, they recognize, maybe he's famous, I guess. It's whatever. But the only reason they do it is because they think they're being clever, and it's like a Chekhov's gun thing. And then it just fucking comes out and says it. He's like, well, not if you die first. And it's like, okay, we know you're probably going to kill these villains, because they're like, at this point, the only villain through line of the film, you know, because the Imperial warlords don't really matter that much. They just set up the Hutt stuff. And so, like, it's just, again, it's like, it's weird decision on top of another weird hat on a hat kind of thing. And I don't really understand. And then we have a cool sequence with the dragon snake. There's a big ass snake looking thing in the water. It's a fake out. There's like some fish guys down there for some reason, I guess. And then there's a snake, and Din has to fight the snake. And I guess you had to tell me this, because I didn't realize it until later that this is how he got poisoned. Din gets bitten by the snake. Snake's trying to eat him. He escapes. The little alien guys come back. They're the Babu Frick race that got more stuff in The Mandalorian. I like those guys. Another point for this movie. There's just fun stuff in the film, and you need to have a bunch of fun stuff like that, because this whole film is very frictionless, and it just kind of is. It's a lazy river ride where you just kind of go around.
What comes after this is probably the only part of the film that actually charmed me. If you've seen anything that Phil Tippett has done, specifically, especially Mad God, which is a great movie. Phil Tippett is a special effects guy. He's a stop motion animator. He did all of the stop motion guys for the original trilogy, and he comes back and in I believe an uncredited directorial role, because there's this whole sequence. It's about 10-20 minutes long. I'm bad at estimating time while I'm in a movie, but it's a long sequence where Grogu is like just kind of bopping around, and all the storytelling is sort of is done through puppets. And Phil Tippett is a master at eking out little bits of emotion out of these little movements of puppets. It looks completely different from everything else in the movie. It's shot completely differently from everything else in the movie. It doesn't belong in the movie.
This is the thing that I said that I would have cut, because it brings the whole story to like a screeching halt.
Oh, I would have cut everything else.
By comparison, I enjoy it more than a lot of the other stuff that was happening. So it's
Yeah, I
hard to
would have cut
complain
everything
about
else.
it.
I would have released it as a 15-minute YouTube short.
I
Like
mean,
it's
it is
the
charming.
um yeah, man, little baby Yoda builds a little baby Yoda hut and meets what, by the way, this is a real tragedy of a moment. Stephen McKinley Henderson is in this, excellent actor. Probably know him from Dune, if you know him from anything these days. He's Thufir Hawat, and I believe that's right.
Oh, I don't. You're saying names right now. You're saying words. I know some of those words.
Right. Yeah, he's Thufir Hawat in Dune. Um, uh, and so he comes out. Baby Yoda meets a swamp creature, and it is the most jolting moment because up until now I have been enjoying this sequence, which has no dialogue in it, because all the dialogue in this film is awful. And this terrible bayou creature appears, which is like a fish or a catfish man or
Yeah, he's like a
some kind of
catfish man.
bug
Yeah.
fish,
He's a catfish
demon.
who looks kind of like E.T.
Yeah. And he opens his, and you truly have to watch this sequence to appreciate what a mouth we are talking about here. When I say he opens his mouth, we are talking about a predator's maw, fangs, a wedge of glistening, dripping fangs, and out of this mouth, without any like kind of warning at all, is the genteel, refined voice of Stephen McKinley Henderson. Sort of a rumbling, an extremely human voice.
Yes.
Which is unnerving to bear witness to, issuing from such a creature with such a face.
I think we'd seen enough like normal voices out of CGI characters at this point in the film that I almost didn't even notice. I think I almost was just like, yeah, all right, sure. At this point,
at this point in this sequence, I was so willing to be like okay with this movie that I was like, oh, what if they just straight up killed Mandalorian here? And little Grogu has to, like, what if they just straight up kill him here? What if he's straight up dead? Like, I knew there was no way that, like, they're killing off.
Yeah, the Mandalorian and Grogu episode 2, Din fucking dies.
Yeah, I knew there was no way, but like I had hope that this would be like, because how great would this, maybe not great. It's already past good, but like how fascinating a decision it would have been to have Din Djarin just fucking die, in the middle of what's up until now has been just a completely normal adventure for him. I think it would have really raised the stakes quite excellently. But there's not going to be a sequel to The Mandalorian. There's not going to be another season of The Mandalorian.
There has to be, right? Like, there's no way they're not setting that up.
No, they're just gonna drop it. It's gonna be a review. It's gonna be resolved in the comics. It's like the Knights of Ren. It's all gonna be resolved in comics.
That was one of my most like hateful moments with Disney, was when they dropped that plot thread, because I really thought, like, there's the whole thing where they tease like the idea of Kylo Ren like killing Luke's school of like Jedi and like recruiting some of the survivors, and I always loved the idea that, and I mean, I don't know, I sent you that alternate Rise of Skywalker script. I loved the idea of like the Knights of Ren being like other minor Sith and like having personalities and shit, and then they just kind of like do one thing and stand around a little bit. But you know what? Actually, speaking of disused characters and dropped threads, I feel like this film, and obviously it would have to be a completely different experience. Let's just say like the best version of this film. It should have had Boba and Fennec in it. I feel like those are characters that we just kind of stopped caring about. But I feel the idea that Boba Fett doesn't matter to the Mandalorians at large feels kind of insane. He should have more of a role in that. I feel like they just let go of that at a certain point. The Boba Fett show had a ton of nonsense moments in it, which
Well,
I
I think
felt
this
was
is
totally demarcated, by the way, by the flashback sequences with the Tuskens, which I liked, versus like all the present day stuff, which I thought was kind of bogus.
it just stole a shared hat's whole flow. Like all the best stuff from the Filoni verse is just plagiarized versions of stuff from other Star Wars EU projects, and now Dave Filoni is just like the Filoni verse stuff is just squeezing the air out of every other Star Wars product, and replacing like all of its characters with its own. All of any other Star Wars character just gets replaced with like a Filonified version of that character. That does nothing but just kind of exist in these terrible shows that go nowhere and have no they have no like substance to them. I'm blaming Dave Filoni a lot, but it's a little bit like blaming you know, he is ultimately responsible for this, in that he's the person who pulls the trigger. But there's a whole network of like Disney producers and like Disney company guys whose job it is to make sure that Star Wars is good, and they are letting Dave Filoni do this.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I know Kathleen Kennedy did finally step back a while ago, but like Favreau could be doing, you know, like Jon Favreau is attached to a lot of this stuff. He could be, I don't know, taking it in a certain direction. He's the director of this film.
I think Jon Favreau is just, I think he's just there to teach Dave Filoni how to handle a camera. Dave Filoni has no, I don't think he even has a film degree. Like he has no, academic or professional background in cinema.
Yeah, I've seen that discourse that people have been sharing where it's like to do Star Wars, you should have like watched like all the like Kurosawa movies and a bunch of the Flash Gordon runs. I think probably watching some of the Flash Gordon stuff is fucking ancillary at this point. I don't know if I think that that's like core material. Kurosawa is, but I also think Kurosawa is for your like making anything in Hollywood. He's like one of the greatest directors in the history of the human race. You probably should have seen some of his stuff, and I don't. Maybe Dave Filoni has. I don't know. I just
definitely. I think Kurosawa movies. I think you need to let Kurosawa lie in the ground a little bit, because Kurosawa movies are so, especially seven what is it, Seven Samurai.
Seven Samurai, yeah.
Are so like I physically get like nauseous when a Seven Samurai plot happens in something that I'm watching, because because I've seen it so many times, and it's like I've seen it with the Saturday Night Live cast, I've seen it in space, I've seen it with cowboys, I've seen it with samurai, I've seen it with knights. Like it is
probably the most overdone Kurosawa thing for not being anywhere near my favorite.
I think most directors just are not like intelligent enough to do to rip off what was it that became Fistful of Dollars? Yojimbo.
Yeah.
Most people just can't do it because it's a fairly complex plot. It's a very like with like a trickstery character.
Yeah, and I think like that film, I don't know, Yojimbo's pretty, I don't know if it's simple. Maybe, I guess, depends on what you compare it to. I think the thing about Yojimbo is that it's actually, I like Sanjuro better, the subsequent film. I think it's a little bit wittier in some cases. I think that, you know, I like what he's doing with like the nature set. It has that really iconic cut sequence where the samurai slash each other, and then like it's got the delayed blood spurt. There's like a lot of like really artistic stuff about that film. And Sanjuro has a really strong like core idea about like, you know, violence and warriors and stuff like that, about like the way that people adjacent to some of that stuff, because the characters who gain through that killing at the end, which is purposeless because the conflict is always resolved, it's just for honor's sake, they go like, they have this moment where they go to the main character, to Sanjuro, they're like, whoa, that's so cool, and Toshiro Mifune like scolds them basically, because they're congratulating him for killing somebody who didn't have to die, and he feels sorrowful. And that's like, there's a perspective in that film about that kind of stuff. And I guess, like, I say this a lot, I don't want people to write chick tracts, but I do want people to have something to say. And I feel like a lot of the bad Star Wars, and just a lot of bad art in general, you know, it's weirdly made by people who don't, like, I don't know what they're trying to say, you know? I have moments where I wonder, like, am I just illiterate? You know, like maybe I'm just really stupid. But it feels like The Mandalorian and Grogu is a film. It's just about a like father-son character who's the son is also a pet, kind of. It's fine. It's like a goof, but it's about like fathers and sons and that kind of stuff. You know, obviously that's the beat they're going for with Rhoda and Jabba, and it's about family, you know. But like that's the gag with the Fast and the Furious, right? Like a bunch of like American action schlock, if ever there was some. You know, it's just like, we like movies with the cars and there's guns and the characters are racing and they do cool car stuff. They're the cool car stuff movies. I haven't seen all of them. I've seen some of them. And I think, you know, when people say, what's it about? It's about family. Yeah, kind of. But it's mostly about wanting to see cars, I think. Because it's cool and it's action. And I think The Mandalorian and Grogu, you'd have to say the same thing. It's about family, by which I mean CGI monsters.
There's 4 basic types of plot. There's farce, and you can disagree with me on this. There's farce, tragedy, comedy, and Bildungsroman. And so tragedy and comedy are classical types of they go back to like the Greek and Roman plays, or the Greek plays. And in a tragedy or a comedy, basically a tragedy is when people die at the end, a comedy is when people don't die at the end. A farce is a play that has no real stakes, but you're there for something else, or not a play, a story, right? It's funny. It tells some kind of, it has some kind of like philosophical point to make. So I would categorize something like Hermann Hesse's Steppenwolf as kind of a farce, in that it doesn't really matter. You know, it can go to some absurd places, but you're not there for like an actual like sort of story. And a lot of picaresques, which are mostly about one usually lower class character navigating sort of a comedy of manners. Those are usually farces as well, in addition to comedies as well, like Airplane or something. And then the last one is Bildungsroman, and a Bildungsroman is about going from 17 to 20, right, or 17 to 25. It's about young people coming up in the world and how people became the people they are. And Star Wars, A New Hope is Bildungsroman. It's about the sort of like ritual entry into adulthood. And the problem is that people have decided that all Star Wars has to be Bildungsroman, and they've sort of wrung that Bildungsroman genre for everything that it's worth, to the point where nobody cares anymore, and it becomes a farce with no jokes, a novel of ideas with no ideas, a comedy with, you know, it's not a comedy or a tragedy because nothing like matters at all. It's not a Bildungsroman because these characters don't really grow or change. It's it's a farce, but like only barely, only by default, right? It has no like deeper meaning, right? Even Airplane is about trying to make you laugh. Even Police Squad It's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to like cause somebody to feel some kind of way. And these plays are these stories that they have in current Marvel, or not Marvel too, but these plays they have in current Star Wars, are just like just completely empty of any kind of directorial intention or thought or like sentiment. And they're no longer even stories. They're no longer even stories. Like a Shakespearean 5-act play starts exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, like resolution. A New Hope follows this play format, or right. You have this long exposition sequence in the beginning where we're introduced to all our characters. It's like 45 minutes long. We're introduced to the robots and to the planets and to the Empire, and to our characters very leisurely. Then there's a rising action as they get on the Death Star, a climax with the fight, and then a sort of a falling action as they escape, and a denouement with the final action scene. Because the final action scene isn't tense. It's all that final action scene is your reward. It's all catharsis. It's all fun. You're no longer really worried about these characters. I mean, there's technically stakes, but as you're watching it, you're having fun. This is your reward for sitting through the whole movie, basically. And the Mandalorian and Grogu has almost no exposition in the classical sense of like, this is why you should care about these people. It has some minimal exposition to barely make the plot happen. It has no rising or falling action. It has no climax. The middle of this, like we said, the middle of the movie is the most inconsequential part, where it's just the puppets. There's no rise in tension. There's no tension at all. There's no rise in tension. There's nothing really at stake.
It is interesting that like Grogu is trying to protect Din, but also he's just letting Din lie there because he can't really do much for him. And I think it's weird that he just like leaves him there, because if somebody's poisoned and you just leave him there, there's like moss growing over shit, and like he's there for a while. I don't know if they really say exactly, but like the film literally does that trick where it's like the sun is like rising and setting and rising and setting, and there's like a time lapse. And it's like, okay, so Din's fucking been there for a minute. Like you leave him there for 7 days, he's gonna get dehydrated.
I saw someone also that I think in the lore Nal Hutta has like 86-hour days, which I think that's just a result of the people who made this picture not knowing.
It also had like a weird Lion King thing that happened in it, where like Din falls and then immediately all of the bugs come out and rush towards him, and it's like,
I think they're going to eat him.
Yeah, no, they are. But
I don't think it's like they're like, it's like a. I mean, that's kind of ironic. In Star Wars, everybody loves eating bugs.
But I just kind of feel like if in nature, right? At least as far as I'm aware, I'm not an insect expert, but usually like you have some kind of sign where like an insect comes out and notices something, and it communicates it to its colony, and then the colony sends in a group of insects.
Whereas you just mean like from a storytelling perspective?
Yeah, they just kind of like swarm, which is just I don't know. And also like insects can just get in the mud hut that Grogu builds. Mm-hmm. So if he ever leaves him unattended, the insects who follow the 5-second rule shall descend.
Yeah,
maybe that's really how insects in rainforests work. I don't know, but it just felt a little like a weird thing that happens, that it's like, oh, are they like that?
I think this is a Phil Tippett thing. I think Phil Tippett is using these bugs to show the passage of time, and that Din Djarin is dying, because it's the kind of visual language that he uses and appears nowhere else in this film.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's just the fact that it stuck out to me a little bit. That kind of
I think the time lapses, they're all Phil Tippett as well. There's a lot of, they seem to be inspired by the famous time lapse from The Green Knight, maybe from somewhere else.
Yeah. That makes that really makes the New Republic look like a bunch of dickheads, though, doesn't it? Because like those aliens go to get backup, and then what? Sigourney Weaver just like takes a week. You know, like she needs authorization, I guess. But like, you have to know if you're flying in there and you're calling like, come in, Mando. It's like, dude, he's dead. You fucking abandoned him. He's no dead. Shot. I mean,
that's the point. That's why you hire the Mandalorian, is he's expendable. Like, I don't understand why they even came for him. I mean, I guess the New Republic never leaves a man behind, but like, you hire an expendable mercenary,
but
bounty hunter. Like, yeah, he dies. You know, shit happens. It's a war.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
you
just
hired
it's
him
very
to be disposable. He's disposable. Like, there's no inkling of a relationship between Mandalorian and Sigourney Weaver, or between Mandalorian and really anybody else. He doesn't even talk to Grogu. He treats Grogu like a dog.
They're at war with the Hutts after this, right?
Hope so.
Like that has to. It's a very. They strike the Hutts, basically, is how they get out. So there's a fight at the end. I saw some people clipping this and laughing about it because the Hutts, and I guess I don't know how you would do it, right? The Hutts like kind of like just slam into each other a whole bunch and like whip each other with their tails and fight how you would expect a giant slug monster would fight. Din is fighting the bounty hunter who, and this is why I brought up the thing earlier about him seeing his face, who gets away when all three villains simultaneously get knocked into the pit with the snake that eats the Hutts. It swallows them whole and like strangles them. And this is basically how it ends, is Rhoda and Din and Grogu are all trying to flee the building while the New Republic's going to strike it, and they have to jump out, and they do the like very cliched thing where they like jump at the last second and they just barely escape the fire from the explosion, which it feels like yeah, aim for the bushes, but it's like they're aiming for the water. And I just like Rhoda says something and he's like, that water looks kind of shallow or something like that. And I was like, dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but like if the water doesn't break your fall, you're gonna die. So
I feel like that line was added because they were worried that kids would watch the movie and then go jump off of rocks.
I suppose, but also it's like that's like a Hollywood cliche at this point.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Aim for the bushes.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, like,
can you imagine if like they do kill Din and that's how they do it?
They hit the mud like blap blap blap.
Oh my god. Well, that's
Mandalorian is in armor and like he jumps into the water and it's like the armor.
He can. This film establishes he can very much swim in that armor.
Very Greyjoy pilled. I like it. Right, Victorian. Sorry, I've been reading those books.
No, it's fine. We should talk about them sometime. It's like the second time they've come up, but no, I just I think this film ends, and I think this was where I finally, because I mean I was messaging you while I was watching it, and I think you can probably verify I was being very charitable to the movie.
A little bit, yeah. I was kind of worried that you were liking it.
That I was like slop enjoyer. Look, I'm not sure where this rests in my pantheon of worst Star Wars movies. I'll say that, because I really did not like Rise of Skywalker. So how I number it exactly, is it the worst Star Wars ever? I'm thinking, I'm not sure, but I think that it's not doing us any favors when everybody comes to me and is like, why do you make YouTube videos about Star Wars? You're a slop enjoyer. Fuck, they kind of got me this time. It kind of is. It, again, really just should have been a couple episodes of TV. There's literally no good reason for it not to be. It wasn't crazy expensive to make. It wasn't, you know,
It's gonna make no money at the box. It's gonna lose a lot of money at the box office.
I think it's made its money back by now. I'm like reasonably certain.
Okay, you think there's some Hollywood accounting going on?
I think, well, I think there's, again, because like the amount that they invested in this film is like very low for a Star Wars, at least.
Okay.
So it's not gonna hit like $1 billion. I think if it hits like 200, people think this really dumb thing, by the way, that you'll probably encounter this if you're talking about this film a lot online. People think that like every film has to make like 2 to 3 times its budget to make money. That's really not true. Like a lot of the like budget and revenue like amounts that we see get projected are like estimates anyway. So like it's not good to get attached to like exact dollar amounts. But there's also other stuff to mention, like films that get produced in certain places, like they'll have like huge tax write-offs and the company's making a lot of money. I think that the two indicators we have to look at are like how good are the ticket sales, because I think the film's probably going to make like, what was it? It was not even 200 million to make this film.
It was okay. I think it was like 165 million.
It was, I thought maybe it was a little bit more than that, but like this is the ballpark that we're talking about, somewhere between like 150 and 200. And that with those amounts, like making the amount back is not going to be that hard for a Star Wars film. I mean, maybe if they make a few more like this, who knows? But this time, I think it's probably going to make the money. I don't think it's going to lose money, but I think that it's going to be a big sticker shock moment for Disney, because I can't imagine it making a crazy amount of money. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think the two indicators are going to be ticket sales and merchandising. What's the merchandising looking like?
I think the reviews are really going to be what hurts Disney. Rise of Skywalker reviewed pretty badly, but especially among fans. But it got sort of it really had that kind of like they really massaged the reviews on Rise of Skywalker. Well, it's fun. People wanted to like it. The reviews on this one were just brutal. It was just brutal. And I mean, I don't watch this movie. Well, okay, do watch this movie, but I think like if you already have Disney Plus or whatever, I think this movie is a good bad movie.
I'll say this.
I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed Rada the Hutt's deranged delivery. Like I didn't enjoy any part of it in the sense of like artistic sentiments were communicated to me through the magical language of film. But I mean, it was stupid. There are movies that I've like I disliked Rise of Skywalker. I hated every minute that I spent watching that movie. I hate thinking about that movie. The Mandalorian and Grogu, stupid and funny. Stupid and funny. Over the top. I mean, terrible, but
yeah, this I think is a watch it online kind of moment. But I just want to say, like, I've seen some people talking lately. I've seen some crazy takes about Star Wars. This has really brought everybody out of the woodwork. I've just seen insane things happening. Star Wars as a fandom is in free fall right now. Like its fans are developing like new types of mental illnesses that we haven't seen yet before on planet Earth. It's genuinely like I don't, because I think like the shock of being like, you get your sequel trilogy and your last Star Wars film is Rise of Skywalker. You get a bunch of streaming series, then you get Andor after a bunch of kind of crappier streaming series, and Mandalorian, which I always felt like was kind of mid. It's a mid series with like a couple like good episodes in my opinion. But people have been talking now. I've seen multiple people like kind of having their posts circulated. It's not like viral, but on Star Wars Twitter, when we're dealing in most Twitter traffic is fake now, but it's getting circulated. It's the thing that all the big Star Wars accounts are responding to of the day, where somebody will say like, oh, the early seasons of Mandalorian were so good. It's like the best Star Wars has ever been or whatever. And I went back and I watched some of it recently and I was like, it's mid. It's all right, you know, like I would talk to a coworker about it. You know, I'd be like, "Oh, have you seen this?" And I honestly think if you liked The Mandalorian enough to watch all of The Mandalorian, you're probably not too good to not stream Mandalorian and Grogu, right? Like this is not such a stark departure from The Mandalorian. That it's like a completely different thing. It's just like it's like if you got a new season of Mandalorian and it started with 2 kind of bad episodes. That's what you get.
And that was it. But I to me, like, what's really offensive about this is the waste. Like Star Wars having shows, even the explanation, like, oh, this is a show for kids. Like, go back and read The Glove of Darth Vader, which is a young reader's book from the 1990s, right? Stuff happens in that book, like characters. There's a bad guy called Grand Moff Hissa, and he like butchers whales on the page, and you get as a big, you know, people are scary, you know. There's a guy with 3 eyes, like stuff happens in those books.
Oh yeah, well, actually, can I do a plug here, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you'll know, I was younger when the Star Wars prequels are coming up, and I talk about I'm making some new Star Wars videos for my channel where I talk about stuff like this, stuff that is in Star Wars that I actually find very interesting, and kind of looking back on it, a little bit of Andor, a little bit of that new Maul show, all that stuff, and I remembered the old Jude Watson books. It was like younger readers, Star Wars EU stuff. So I remember, you know, it has that sort of like not young adult, but like whatever like pre-young adult is, you know, like teen reader stuff, where it's like the print is slightly larger than the average like adult book, and the word choice is slightly simpler than the average adult book. But I remember there's characters in there like one of my favorites is Jenna Zan Arbor, who is this like scientist, kind of like borderline eco-terrorist figure. She's a geneticist who's trying to understand the Force. She tortures Qui-Gon Jinn. She appears in a few different Star Wars things of that era. But you know, this era of Star Wars had stuff for kids that, like, exactly as you're saying, stuff really happens in it, and there's stakes, and there's also like that whole thing about like the idea that there's like a scientist who's like getting scientific progress but trying to understand something spiritual, and she has no point of reference for it. But then also she is making progress with understanding midichlorians, and that idea that her character inherently explores the tension between science and spirituality that exists with the Force in Star Wars, that's interesting. And this new stuff, even if it's for kids, it could be like that, but it's not.
Yeah. And this brings me to something that I was speaking with you about before we started recording, and hopefully that, like, when you cut down this episode, hopefully this finds its way in, because I really believe that what is happening here is that I can only understand what I'm watching through the lens of autism. Like Din Djarin's like desire to keep his head covered, as Grogu has become more like willful, more capable of intentional action and desire, but remains nonverbal. He's really started to read less as a young child and more as a nonverbal autistic human being. And so like Grogu uses assisted speech technology through the IG-88 platform. He and there's a fantastical side to this, where, not fantastical in the sense of like being unrealistic, but like Din Djarin is also, deeply, he doesn't need to communicate verbally. Grogu doesn't need to communicate verbally to be safe with Din Djarin. He doesn't need to be to like make himself heard, and there's maybe something relaxing about characters like Rada the Hutt, who just says exactly who he is and what he wants in a kind of a monotone. Like he doesn't he's not asking the other person to put forward emotional energy into understanding what he wants, or reading his face, or looking for double meanings in the things that he says. He just, he just is who he is, and he will tell you. And I feel like a lot of the reason why there are people who are deeply attached to these characters, and I feel like the reason is that these characters are very open to autistic people, very open to and this really hit me because I was watching the criticism for this movie. A lot of them were things that like an allistic person might say about an autistic person. Cruelly, like, why aren't you showing your face? Why aren't you talking? Why don't you, why aren't you emoting? What do you want? Where, what are you trying to get? Why can't I understand what you want? Why are you just telling me what you want? Why aren't you showing me? Like, all of these criticisms to me, it's just like, I was just kind of like between one moment I'm laughing, and then I was like, hang on, these are all things that like an allistic person who is criticizing or attacking an autistic person would say. And I don't know how to feel about that, because on the one hand, I stand by all these criticisms. Like I'm not autistic. I would like to see, actors with faces who emote. And I'm not going to, to say, we should be, I care about accessibility for everybody. But there's basically a line, in my opinion. And I don't think like every character in this entire franchise should be designed to be a comforting presence for autistic people. And maybe that's selfish, but yeah, I think there should be plots. I think there should be stories. I think there should be drama. I think there should be stakes and tension. But I also can't help but empathize a little bit, maybe, with people who see those reactions and respond really, who feel like they are being attacked. And their ability to live their lives is being attacked.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
this kind of reminds me of something that I saw recently that I did not get involved with because I felt like I would be adding to a pile on. But it was somebody on Twitter who I guess people know decently well in like the Star Wars Twitter space, but who is not like a big account, made some comments, and it was obviously very combative. So that this got very hostile with a lot of people very fast. Another reason why it was just I think the correct choice to not jump in. But one of the things that was being said was that Andor fell into the whole like bury your gaze trope with Vel and Cinta, and there's been a lot of discourse about this. I actually have a video on my Patreon about it that I'll let that be public at some point. Not yet, but at some point I'll put that out, like maybe Christmas time, because I usually hold on to those for like at least a year. But I made that video a while back, and the thought that I like keep having to myself is a lot of people don't understand barrier gaze, and I think it's a perfect parallel to what you're talking about, because the problem with barrier gaze is not that somebody writes a story where a gay person dies. The problem is that it's like a widespread cultural phenomenon, it's kind of like I don't know, it's like mold. Like if you had a piece of cheese in your fridge and you have it and you pull it out and it's got like a little spot of like white fuzz on it, you can kind of cut that off and ignore it depending on the cheese, obviously. But like if you have a block of Parmesan, but if you pull that thing out and it's all blue fur, you got to throw that shit out. And I think the feeling that people have, sorry, go ahead.
Cheese nerd here. Just a little note here. If you have a block of Parmesan and you have a little white growth on it, that's probably not mold. That's probably salt, which is percolated onto the surface. So that's probably safe to eat.
Okay, well,
don't take this as culinary advice if it's obviously mold and fuzzy. But
I just meant fuzz, yeah. But like, because usually with mold and cheese, like the more the mold progresses, it gets like that greenish blue kind of fuzz to it. I was thinking like a small little bit of white fuzz. Usually you could just like cut around it and get rid of that. They say you're not supposed to do that, but in my experience, it's usually fine. I don't think I've ever gotten food poisoning doing something like that.
Nothing you see in this podcast should be.
I'm just saying this is what I've done.
Or culinary advice.
This is what I've done this. This is what my mom did when we were growing up. This is what she always did. She's a big she's a chef. My grandmother as well was, and like just the whole thing. Like the problem is that it's pervasive, right? And when it gets really pervasive, it kind of feels like you can't do anything with it. To the point where if you make a story and you kill off a gay character, it can feel like you're just playing into this cultural phenomenon, regardless of your reason. It starts to get detached from authorial intent. And I think what you're talking about is kind of like that, you know, like on the one hand, I think people are gonna, if they're autistic and they connect to a character for whatever reason, this might be crazy. I didn't really have a problem with Rhoda the Hutt. I mentioned earlier he's my favorite character in the movie. I think he's a weird undercut of the expectation with a Hutt character. Part of the reason I didn't have a problem with him is I watched the Clone Wars when I was younger, and Zero the Hutt just talks like a guy. So the idea that Rhoda, who has also like lived separately for a while, would just talk like a guy, and in fact be a less annoying guy. That I thought that was fine, you know, but it is the kind of thing that audiences are going to be disconnected from, because they're going to be like, wait, what the fuck? Why is he not talking like the one Hutt that we know and like the other two Hutts that we see in the film?
I hear you. There in Star Wars Legacy, there's a character who's a Hutt, who is like in Star Wars, in the Legends continuity, Hutts have no gender, but this Hutt is kind of diegetically like a drag queen. She has all this like makeup and big like hats and weird glasses, and she's a really she's like the protagonist's almost like friendly character. She owns a bar. She's a really great like a source of information type. Yeah, exactly. But also like this character's kind of there's kind of like an auntie or mother relationship there, which is really cool. And I feel like this was in 2006, like that's where Hutt characterization was in 2006, and like we're just now doing another Hutt who has like a different personality than Jabba, and it's like, can we like how long do we have to wait as Star Wars fans to get back to the level of storytelling and like visual design that was taking place in 2006, and then go beyond that? Like how long? And this is like what's frustrating for me is like how long do we have to wait for anything good to happen? Like how long do you want the audience to wait for good content, right? Because I want there to be good Star Wars content. I want Star Wars to have, you know, stories that deliver, but like and interesting characters. But like Rhoda the Hutt is so little. It's like a crumb. It's like a little crumb of a character, a little notion of a crumb of a character, because he doesn't do anything, and it's not relevant to the plot. That he could just be. He doesn't even have to be Rhoda the Hutt, because like he doesn't have to be Rhoda. He could be Dwayne. He could just be like a guy.
If you wanted to watch this film because you're excited about the like world of Star Wars, you know, like the galaxy, and you're like, oh, what new things about the galaxy are we going to learn today? You're like, oh, what about the world building? This film has world building like LaCroix has flavor, you know, like it does. But I think if you're expecting, you know, to have that kind of experience, you're right. No, it is a notion of a notion. I think the weird thing is, and I'm not like trying to say like the film is, oh, it's actually secretly good. I think that this film has a lot of stuff in it that would be way less offensive if it was in a different Star Wars film. I think the Star Wars prequels are basically proof of that, because you could do a lot of like weird little CGI things that look a little funky, or just have a strange character moment, or you know, whatever, what have you. But obviously, like, people always say this very trite thing where they're like, okay, I like that you're saying that this Star Wars has an interesting thing in it, but I think that they should do that but make it good next time.
Yeah.
And instead of good, I guess the way that I would put it is like, I want it to be a little bit more meaningful. I feel like the problem with this film having a lot of comfort character stuff in it is that that's like what there is. And I really think that if you're going to give something your time, much less your money, and you're expecting it to be artistic, which I think people have, you know, again, it should have been a show. People have different expectations for a streaming series than for a movie. I think the expectations for what you're going to get artistically are going to be different, because there's stuff that you can go to a theater and watch that is going to provoke you. You're going to think. This film doesn't do that, and I think it's for the worse, unfortunately. Yeah,
It's a waste of a dismal waste of everybody's time, that'll be my coda for this, and hopefully the name of the episode, a dismal waste of everybody's time.
I might try to put a little spin
especially
on
the
it.
people who made not our time, but a dismal waste of the time of everybody who was involved in it, a dismal waste of time with the Star Wars IP, a dismal waste of time waiting for garbage.
Also, not to hit the same point 5 million times, but I have to say about the Mandalorian wears a helmet, you know, doesn't show his face thing. I actually like the autism of it all. I think that that's a very, like, a brilliant idea in concept. People said that for years about Master Chief from Halo.
Who's not?
I do think that you know, if
the
you're
Master Chief's character is so completely different from that.
Yes.
Sorry, Halo fans are beyond stupid.
No,
Sorry,
I think but I do like that read a little bit. You know, I like that sometimes he's a little emotionally restrained. He doesn't show his face. Like, there's stuff that I think, and true to life, a lot of autistic people I know love Halo. So I think the projection out of that character says a lot. I do think that you can have, you know, good voice acting that conveys emotions, that isn't just monotone, because Master Chief is also funny. He's quippy.
He's dry.
He's dry, but he's compassionate. There's it's a little bit of both, I think. And I think kind of Pedro Pascal's not a bad actor. I don't really know if I think anybody in this film is like a bad actor. I mean, I guess with the exception of people who are just cameos. I don't know that much about that, but I have to think that I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think about the decision to make this film. When it first got teased, again, I was very charitable. I was thinking to myself, okay, the teasers for this film and the trailers and stuff just look goofy. I can't make heads or tails out of what's happening. And the truth is, it's a film about nothing. You know, not that it's literally about nothing, but it's Seinfeld a little bit. The characters do what the characters do. They have personalities. They go places. They talk to each other. I don't know. I am somebody who wrings a lot of meaning out of films, including Star Wars, and I'm a little nonplussed with this one.
And people, people seem to like it. So it has
I'm gonna get crucified for this among the Glazers. I am gonna. I think because sometimes I talk about stuff and people, I think I'll say like, oh, I think it's bad that there's misinformation like this, because people, for some fucked up stupid reason, there's so much misinformation about Star Wars that I just like, I have an infinite supply of things that I could debunk if I so chose, and occasionally I do. But like every time I do, somebody's like, stop shilling, the corporation isn't going to pay you or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know. I feel like if you talk to people who are like insane about Star Wars, you're either a shill or you're like a toxic fandom judge, you know? And I just I feel like I'm acting like a chud thinking like a woke, a little bit with this film. Oh, I don't know.
It's a disaster. Like it's a disaster.
It's tough. I did not want the return of Star Wars to be like this. It's not going to be good for the fandom, for the other creatives who are working on other projects.
Mm-hmm.
There's other stuff in Star Wars that looks like it might be good.
Famous last words. Well, we'll see you next year with Star Wars Starfighter. Again, it's just gonna be like the Star Wars Starfighter is like the recreation of the canceled Rogue Squadron movie that Patty Jenkins was supposed to do. And it's like, I can go and read the Rogue Squadron comics today. I can go and read the Rogue Squadron books today. Like, if you're going to adapt it to a film and you're not going to make the movie better and you're not going to show me something that I can't already see, I can get in an X-Wing in Star Wars Squadrons, like right now, if I wanted to. Like, there is so much Star Wars that I feel like Star Wars films should feel a responsibility to add to the Star Wars universe and to not be, retreads of stuff that is just like the interstitial like filler of Star Wars. I know, like, I think people said, oh, like, I like The Mandalorian because when it first came out it was like a small scale movie, but I don't actually believe that. I think the reason why people like The Mandalorian is because they felt stakes. The Star Wars sequel trilogy was so huge that it felt like it had no stakes. There's a million Death Stars. There's a demon that can, do a force storm across an entire planet. Like, the movie is just going to have whatever bullshit happen.
Well, also, like the third film in that trilogy just adds, like, it's just new stakes. It's just its own film.
So people liked The Mandalorian when it came out because they thought, oh, this is a guy who needs a bit of money and has a little kid, and those are like actual stakes. That's like something that can actually be threatened. It has nothing to do about whether the film is small or large scale, and it has everything to do with whether or not we care about these characters. And I think it's a real tragedy that Disney, Disney's like filmmakers. It feels like watching amateur films, and it feels like it never feels like I'm being wowed by like shots that I couldn't imagine, by special effects that are doing something that I couldn't have thought about.
Yeah, it does often feel very like visually bland. This is something I liked about George Lucas and I think now that he's not involved, people are, of course now they miss it. But I always liked the Star Wars prequels, and I think something cool about Lucas was that he was always like, I'm going to show you something, like when you're, especially, maybe it's just if you're a film person, or maybe it's just if you're a kid, but when you go to a theater, there's this sense of like, oh, it's the big screen. I'm going to see something. What am I going to see? Show me something I haven't seen before. you know, and Lucas has that kind of like key to the imagination of a child where he would go, I'm not going to do my Lucas voice. Let me show you a little guy called Jar Jar Binks, you know, like he's just got stuff that he's throwing on the screen, and everybody always talks about the references that he's channeling, and it's an homage to this and an homage to that, but homages don't make good films, at least not inherently. I think that, you know, Return of the Jedi is not enhanced by doing an homage to Flash Gordon. I think it's enhanced because it's like Luke Skywalker is fighting like a philosophical battle while also struggling with the idea that he might not be able to save somebody that he loves, you know? And this is enhanced with certain moments where the camera lingers on him and there's like music swelling and it's very eerie. There's a lot of darkness to sort of emphasize that these characters are traveling into darkness. It's you know, there's a visual language and a poetics to it all. And I didn't go to school for film, but
Luke's plan is so needlessly complicated. When in Return of the Jedi, he could have just walked in and killed everyone with his lightsaber.
in what regard?
He could have just done that. Like I don't like the beginning of Return of the Jedi.
Oh,
he could have just
the Jabba section.
He goes through this like 6-dimensional chess plan, and he could have walked in there.
Well, I was thinking about like the scenes on the Death Star much later, which is the stuff in Return of the Jedi that I like. Every time I sit down to watch that film, it always kind of feels to me like the Jabba stuff really drags, and it's got a few moments, but it's like 40. We talked about this. I think we should just do an OT episode. I think we did do one podcast. We were gonna. We were gonna, but we had a lot more people in the call, and then we didn't end up getting everybody together.
Oh, I want to talk about the action scene. I promised to talk about the action in this movie before.
Which one?
And we've kind of talked about it in Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yeah, which action scene? Because we talked about
just run through all of them together. We talked about like there's never any reason for Mandalorian to be doing any of the things. And all of his fight moves are so boring. The whole time they keep forgetting that he has a flamethrower. I think what frustrates me about this is that the Mandalorian, as a Mandalorian, has like so many like famous weapons, right? That he's trained with all the traditional Mandalorian arts. They're kind of like Six if instead of like having a tiny dagger, they had a flamethrower and a magnetically activated whip. And
I think I only ever see him use the whip wire thing and the flamethrower. I do think he uses it a few times in the film.
He also has they're like the whistling darts or something. He has the missile, the wrist rockets, the guided wrist rockets. He has the missile backpack.
I did notice an absence of jetpack in the film.
I feel like I struggle to through this whole, I want to do a cut of this movie where there's a little Stannis Baratheon on the side, and every time the Mandalorian is using his flamethrower, he smiles, and then every time he's not using his flamethrower, but he could and should be using his flamethrower, he's frowning. Like there's so like he has this flamethrower through the whole movie. But the whole scene where they're in they're getting attacked by creatures in the arena, he could just light them all on fire because he has a flamethrower. The scene where he's they dump him in the pool, he could light them on fire because he has a flamethrower. Right? The scene where he's meeting with the Hutts. Also, they they take his jetpack away before they dump him in the pool. I think.
There's at least two scenes where he uses the flamethrower that I remember. One of them is later in the film. One of them is when he's fighting the stormtroopers at the AT-ATs. And I remember this very specifically because he lights a dude on fire. And you'd think that... catching on fire is not fun. It's also not a quick death.
I want to see him torch people, and I want to hear them just like howling in agony.
My favorite scream from the original Star Wars is with the cameo of the one, I can't remember the guy's name, the dude who has the cameo inside the bunker. Han throws like a pack of like explosives at him and he gets knocked over the edge of the railing. He like flies down and he goes, ah! There's like a big like iconic Scream moment. I'm pretty sure that's a cameo from somebody. I just can't remember the name off the top of my head. I'm not remembering anything today. I'm tired as hell. But that's about one of my favorite moments, and I kept waiting for like a moment like that. You know, I get that it's cheesy. So is Grogu. You know, like we're not. What are we above that now?
Anyway,
I don't know how they made this. It's very mysterious to me, because I remember walking out of Rise of Skywalker and being like, "Oh, that wasn't very good." And I kind of felt like, how does a movie like that happen? And the more I learned about it, the more I was like, okay, I kind of understand why some of the stuff with that film happened. With this one, I'm gonna be very interested to learn just exactly what their fucking problem was.
it's kind of shocking how bad Disney is at making movies. Like I want to just comparing a coughing baby to a hydrogen bomb here. A24, right, has put out a bunch, like they've built a brand around producing films that are a little bit elevated, but not too elevated. Like it's not really like an art film, like an art film. Like I think people have this like idea that art films are like abstract and boring.
Black and white, soundless, French characters smoking. It cuts away, some cursive text on the screen. You know.
But over the past like 5 years or so, they've built a really well deserved reputation. Like basically, in the same time that Disney has been doing Star Wars, they've built a reputation for being a film studio that produces good movies or interesting movies. And they have fans. They have people who will go out and watch a movie because it's an A24 movie. And you know, they have more hits than misses. And so it's obviously you know, making a bunch of movies in a row that have hit the same level of quality is obviously a decision by the producers. Like there's a point where it becomes a decision by the producer. And Disney Star Wars, these are producer decisions. I mean, we can blame Dave Filoni for directing a bad movie, and I certainly do. But the producers decided, the producers knew that he makes bad movies, and they hired him to produce a movie, and he made a bad it's the whole thing. Like Rise of Skywalker, badly produced. The whole sequel trilogy, it turns out to have been very badly produced. When a new A24 movie comes out, even if like a bad director, if like Sean Levy was working on a movie for A24, I would think, well, Sean Levy's made some really bad movies in the past, but if A24 is producing one of his movies, it's probably because they saw something in the script or in the pitch that they really liked. So I might go watch it. But if Disney is like producing a movie, and even if someone who's a filmmaker that I really respect and like is attached to it, I would probably go, they're doing a Disney movie? They're doing a Star Wars movie? How is this gonna be fucked up? Right? And that's where we are. It's a bad business decision. It's bad business decisions from Disney. This is the studio that made Aladdin 3. Like, this is the studio that made The Lion King 2. These Disney is they milk stuff for everything it's worth. And I don't think we should expect anything more or anything better from them at any point in the future at this point.
I'm dreading the Ahsoka stuff. That's going to be very bleak. I'm going to be looking at that shit like I'm Tommen staring out the window of King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy work. Well, I mean, this has been interesting to talk about, at least.
Yes.
The Mandalorian and Grogu, offensively inoffensive. Structured very weirdly. Just It's a TV show. And it's not Andor. I've seen some crazy opinions lately where people are like, I like this better than Andor. It's I felt like
we
that.
We really have to be recording more episodes because when we get together, we have so much to talk about. I don't know how long this is going to come out to be.
This will be quite long, but that's fine. It's
the people love slop. People will go to the movies and watch a terrible movie and hate it, and then they'll get
if you're just
2 hours.
If you're second screening a YouTube video so that you can hear us ramble about Star Wars, you're probably in for a penny, in for a pound. I have to assume.
Right, yeah. Okay, I mean, Chief Talks is going to do a 6-hour long piece on something, and didn't Mala do like a 30-hour stream? And people fucking watch that shit.
There's some crazy people out there, man.
Not to imply I think Chief Talks is annoying, but I think Mala
they're not
is
the same category.
I want to be totally clear that by putting them together in a sentence, I do not want to imply that Chief Talks is anywhere close to what Mahler is. As a person.
This is a drama video. Now this is drama.
Yes.
Yeah. Listen, you can fight those people. I'm divesting myself of. Fuck. I feel, this. I want to end on this. I do feel kind of bad for Dave Filoni. I don't feel bad for people noticing that he makes a lot of bad stuff, which I think is true. I've seen some crazy emotional reactions because part of what's happened here is the Star Wars fandom has languished incredibly. It's just like a COVID fandom now. It's a fandom that is like permanently indoors, like sitting behind computer screens, enjoying Star Wars that way. And this was like their first grass touching moment. And it's this Rise of Skywalker, half a decade, Mandalorian and Grogu. We are in the end times are indeed upon us. We are indeed close.
I feel like we've stopped making content in general. Like media has just stopped happening in general. Like, remember the Elder Scroll, a little game called the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim.
The news about that game is so sad.
Oblivion came out in what, 2005?
6, I think, but yeah.
2006. And then it's a long dev cycle, but Skyrim is like genuinely a great video game. And then nothing. Neither high nor
I don't think there was an Elder Scrolls game that had a gap from another one of like 10 years even. No. When was Morrowind? What was Morrowind? 2002? 2003?
And it's like, just let it die. And I just let it die. Let somebody else pick it up. But the dev cycles have just gotten hugely long, and the products are getting worse. Like, are people just stupid now? Are people just stupid? Is everyone just can nobody do anything?
I think everything is so corporate and bloated now. Corporations are constantly making money by cutting costs, so they're making teams smaller and smaller. The expectations on the devs are like really weird. The expectation is not make a good game that sells well anymore if we're talking about video games. And I don't know if the same thing it can be said for movies all the time anymore. The expectations have changed. So when we're sitting here being like, hey, who wants to play a good video game? There are companies that do this, by the way. There are still companies that just make stuff and it sells. You could do it, but there's whole like sections of that corporate just part of that industry that is, first of all, not run by people who enjoy the shit. I think most video game companies are not run by people who like video games. With Hollywood, it's probably a little bit different, but yeah, it's a dark time.
It sucks. Everything sucks. I'm miserable. Thank you.
Also, Disney did briefly trot out generative AI on their platform, and I just have to say, massive middle finger. fucking incredible shit.
Yeah, people like it. People like it. Nobody cares. I really feel this really painfully. Just like there's nobody cares about quality anymore, and nobody understands quality, or like people seem almost afraid to have standards.
Well, it's also like the people who think that they have standards oftentimes just don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, I love talking to nerds on the internet about writing and have them just talk about world building and power scaling over and over again. You know, like, fuck off. Like, genuinely, I had people in my mentions and in the mentions of people I was mutuals with somewhat recently for a discourse that was just mind melting, where they were like, no, world building is a fundamental part of writing. And it's like, you could learn everything you need to know about that shit in a day. You know, there's a reason YouTubers use it for video fodder all the time. It's because it's easy, and also you can just constantly apply it to new Dungeons and Dragons settings that you're cooking up. You know, I feel like it's very telling that there's writers who have written about writing. Like I read, you know, people will know this about me. I read a lot of Ursula Le Guin and in her essays and stuff like that. And I also, you know, I a book that was very formative to me was two actually, Ray Bradbury's Zen and the Art of Writing and Stephen King's On Writing. And if you read all of these, you know, like the Le Guin books that I have on my shelf right in front of me, The Wave in the Mind, Words Are My Matter, No Time to Spare, and I've got a couple other ones somewhere else. Those ones, the two Bradbury and King books that I mentioned, and then if you read oh my God, Strunk & White's The Elements of Style. That right there will give you a somewhat basic but important understanding of writing, of the craft of writing, and maybe add on to that. I've got another one here. Madison Smartbell's Narrative Design. That's another one if you want to like learn about like different kinds of like narratives and structure and stuff like
it's
that.
very technical. And people don't realize that it's very technical. Stuff has to fit together in very like particular ways.
Well, it's everybody talks about like the Imagineer version of writing, where it's just about imagining things, you know, because that's what they have access to. But nobody talks about like writing and like you're saying, like technical stuff, like structure, right? The craft. You can, it's so telling to me that these people understand or seem to understand or seem to have interest in like all kinds of like little things about like, here's how world building should work. And when you're world building, you should always do this and never do that. Blah, 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 blah. But then, like, you ask them to structure a fucking sentence, you know?
Yeah. Can you dive? What's the subject? What's the predicate?
Write me a paragraph, right? Like, and all of a sudden, you know, you just realize you're talking about writing with non-writers who have a perspective on writing. And I do try to be conscious of this, you know, because like a lot of the stuff we're talking about, like this is a film, you know? I don't work on films and TV shows. I try to be conscious of the fact that I'm just talking about like the viewer experience and like my opinions as a writer and stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so goddamn charitable to a lot of this shit, because if I was uncharitable, I'd be a fucking fool. But I feel like it's a world, it's not just that nobody has standards anymore, which of course, I mean, it's very easy to get that impression, you know. It's that everything is so passive. Learning is an active process. Being intelligent is a practice. And I think that smart is not a thing you are, it's a thing you do. And if you can be the smartest person in the world, and if you're not applying it, it doesn't fucking matter.
I feel the passivity a lot. Like I've been trying to write myself. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I'm really practicing right now is exposition, is that first act, because I've been finding myself really struggling once I get to like the middle part of something that I'm writing, because I haven't done the work in the exposition act. I notice that what I was following is a lot of these, a lot of the stories that I see around me right now do, which is they just kind of dump you right into the action. There's this idea that the optimal thing to do is to like limit your exposition, to limit to like get the audience into the story as fast as possible. But you look at something like Shakespeare, and it'll start very slowly, or The Lord of the Rings starts very slowly. It really builds up this sense of place, and like a lot of this is world building, but more importantly, you're like setting up the stakes of your movie. You're setting up the stakes of your story, what people care about. And it's what makes some of these swerves very shocking. Maybe I have to blame like James Bond movies or like action movies that'll often start with like an opening action sequence to ground you in the character. Like Indiana Jones and Steven Spielberg and George Lucas did this a lot, where these movies were all about the experiential aspect of watching a film, and they had a certain artificiality to them. Like a George Lucas movie isn't like, I don't know, like Patton, right? A World War II movie, which is about trying to get as accurate as possible a recreation of a real World War II battle, or the life of a World War II general. Accuracy is no longer the point. The filmic language of tension can fill in for this sense that this is important. But I think it's proven to be a really dangerous road to go down. Because now we have movies that don't have any of that sense of like reality. They're not gritty. They don't get under your fingernails, because they're too nervous that the audience they'll violate, that like they're too dedicated to like following like filmic precision and like filmic language. That they forget that they're actually telling a story about a real person that exists in space at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we're kind of this is a bit far afield from where we started out, but it's important. I think it matters.
I think you should probably just cut the whole like first half when we were just talking about the plot, and you should probably just start at like an hour and a half in.
Oh, I think I'm leaving it all in.
You're leaving it all.
I think this is just gonna be. We're just gonna slam this one down on the table.
Okay.
And if it's fucked, then it's fucked. But we are asking people to listen to us talk about Mandalorian and Grogu.
And then as we do hopefully more of these, we can like cut down our recording as we have like less. Once I believe, or I hope that as we say more, we will have less to say.
Perhaps,
and it'll be a little more compact.
Well, we can talk a little bit about the format. I actually might cut this, the inside baseball part. I might actually cut, because I guess what I was gonna say is like we could talk later, but like the thing that I was gonna say is depending on how we move forward with recording, we can do stuff like do
you want to actually just stop recording here?
Yeah, sure. That's, I guess, all we have to say about the film before we, veer off in too many different directions talking about writing. Although that was starting to get more interesting than the movie.
It was much more interesting.
We'll talk about that, I suppose, sometime in the future. But thanks for listening, everybody. I really appreciate it. Do you have any final thoughts?
No.
No thoughts. Yeah.
No thoughts.
Okay, that's fine. Take care.
Take care.